All right, guys, look, I said I was going to do a podcast about this a couple days ago. I didn't. I said I would do one today because it makes more sense to do one today after Whit's interview with Bill Roth, which was posted today. And what I wanted to do is I just wanted to get on here and talk a little bit about the Board of Visitors meeting and also Whit's podcast, answer some questions, ask some questions, and also glean some thoughts from it. So we're going to start with the Board of Visitors meeting. For those of you that don't know, here are the quick Spark Notes. Virginia Tech approved a $229.2 million budget increase. It passed 13-1 in the Board of Visitors vote. 47.1 million of those dollars are coming in fiscal year 2026. Now, this plan was, or the mission was at first assigned and called to from Whit Babcock at this retreat that Virginia Tech had at the River Course a couple of months ago, maybe a month ago. And it was spearheaded by Rector John Rakovich and board members Jay Pearson and Ryan McCarthy. You can look up what they do. They are on the current board right now, and they were basically tasked with, hey, we need more money for athletics. You guys come up with a plan for how to make it happen. And this is the plan that they came forward with. So essentially, the TLDR, again, $229.2 million of additional funding between 2026 and 2029. How this works out is 10.8. We made a cut there because I was about to start reading the numbers, and that makes much less sense. And this is a perfect call to action for you to join us on YouTube because I am showing it right now. So you can see the actual breakdown by source of where it's coming from. Now, I'm going to get into some of my questions regarding this in a little bit, but first I want to talk about the vote. First of all, the one dissenting member is Nancy Dye. She is the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee chair. She was the one vote no. She said, quote, "I've always taken principled votes to keep in-state tuition affordable and Virginia Tech Advantage funded for first-generation students and others needing assistance. I'm beyond grateful for those with the financial ability and incredible generosity and vision to support the academic research and athletic goals of our university. However, in recent weeks, I've heard from too many families who have struggled and sacrificed to send their children to Virginia Tech, who have paid Virginia taxes for decades. I cannot support the increase in student fees as a built-in requirement to finance this." She is referencing that the Virginia Tech student fees will be going up. $100 per student per year to help cover this. Let me say this before I get into my general thoughts. Getting mad at Nancy Dye or getting mad at anybody who is opposed to this is misguided, in my opinion. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast or if you are, attending games on Saturdays, you care very much about athletics. And while I also care very much about athletics, there are plenty of people who don't care at all. Now, you're more than welcome, and I do disagree with the notion that this is not important and shouldn't be funded. But to attack these people, I've seen not a lot of people, but some people do that, was predictable and also misguided, in my opinion. We also heard from faculty rep Dr. Justin Lemkel. He basically raised the point that the university has been asked on several different occasions to support, staff funding, staff salaries, and other items. And, that can has been kicked down the road. But as soon as this comes up, it gets solved immediately. Here, again, to reiterate, villainizing these two people is tremendously misplaced, in my opinion, and stupid, honestly. I've heard great things about Nancy Dye. Obviously, she's committed to giving back and giving her time to Virginia Tech, which we should all be tremendously appreciative for. I also have a ton of respect for professors, teachers, public servants. So this is not anti them at all. I just completely disagree with you guys. And here's why. Hokie sports plays a huge part in, number one, the salaries that the teachers are making right now. If Michael Vick never happens, if Frank Beamer never happens, the salaries don't look the way that they look. The school doesn't look the way that they look. And that's just the reality of the situation. Blacksburg's not as attractive to live in. Number two, when you invest in sports and you win games, you make fans for life. And when you make fans for life, you create experiences that create a higher propensity for those fans to give back to the university. Now, a lot of people are making the point, why are we asking donors in the school? Why are we asking the school to step in place of the donors in some capacity to help fund football? Well, we haven't won a whole lot and haven't created a whole lot of memorable experiences when it comes to football. And every year that you don't do that, you lose out on the opportunity to capitalize on folks to give back to the university. So that is tremendously important and something that you have to do. So that is my pushback there. Now, to both of their points, I agree that college is heinously, disrespectfully, grossly too expensive. I think it's awful how much we're charging for college, what goes into paying to go for college, and how college has become not even like it's become a checkbox rather than like something that is a step above what is expected, I suppose. But my stance is this: I'm upset that's the case, but it is the case. And look, as long as the applications continue to roll in and you have applications that you can't even fulfill because too many people want to be going to school here, and the government will continue approving the ridiculous student loans that are necessary to subsidize sending these people to college, I don't think that Virginia Tech should operate with one hand behind their back and not maximize their ability to grow their brand, grow their donor base, and grow their experience for their students. And unfortunately, if that has to sit on the back of students in some capacity, then that just kind of is what it is. And that's not me being anti-student. That's me being, look, this is the way that it goes everywhere. And it's unfortunate that it's too expensive. Nobody's going to agree with you or disagree that it is too expensive and heinous, but that's the way it is. And also, I went ahead and did this. I was going to read down a list of a bunch of different things that are on the operating budget for Virginia Tech, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to single out specific departments or different folks like that. But if you go ahead and you look at the operating budget for Virginia Tech or any one of these big schools, there's a whole lot of garbage that is accounted for on that operating budget. It's just funny that with sports, we're having this expanded conversation, and redacted is not one of the things on there, or funding for redacted is not on there too. So there are some crazy things that we spend money on that don't have near the impact as a good athletic department and good football team have on the university that are being spent on. I'll say one, because I don't know of a department this affects, but the Hokies Stone can add up to $1 million per building to work with the Pacific Quarry that we work with. Yes, I want all of our buildings covered in Hokies Stone, but up to $1 million more for a building that we're building to cover it with a specific type of rock. So there are some crazy things in that budget that are spent on, agreed upon, and never dove into. And athletics are important, and that's how I feel about it. And I'm glad that it passed. We'll get into some of my hesitations with it. Yeah, we can do that now. Here are some of the letters from the lunch pail that I got regarding this, and then we'll do Whit's podcast. First one from Brett Stredge. Do you think this will energize the fan base and they'll be more inclined to increase their donations? This is my 100% biggest fear with this plan that has been put forward. Due to this plan, which you can still see on the screen, I forgot to take it down, but due to this plan, the institution is providing, starting at $10 million and then climbing up a little bit to $12.5 million of support. That'll account for $48.3 million of the total 229. Philanthropy is $120 million of the 229. So you're asking philanthropic efforts to cover more than half of this. And I've seen a couple of different figures, but I believe that the Virginia Tech Hokie Club raised $22 to $20 million last year. This has us budgeted for $30 million per year. When I first saw that figure, I am extremely dubious, and kind of pissed is probably the wrong word. But to come out and say we're making this huge investment in football, and then you're like, by the way, donors need to step up 33% of what they're giving already, even though the team has been pretty garbage for the last couple of years. That's my biggest problem. Now, after Whit's podcast, he did mention, that the University Advancement will be working with the Hokie Club to help raise these funds. I also have mentioned before, I hope that this means that they have some sort of committed dollar figure that's in there. If you have a commitment for 20, 30, 40, $50 million that you're just waiting to cash, but the donor has agreed to it, that's a huge deal. And that changes the math on this completely. But if you're just putting out this sheet and you're like, all right, guys, congratulations, good job, we increased our athletics budget, and the only change that you made is you're asking for more money from donors, that's certainly a strategy. But until I get more information, I am dubious of that portion of the plan. So that's how I would answer. In terms of energizing the fan base, I think the fan base has already been energized. And Whit alluded to this in the podcast too, that the fan base has been fantastic, which we have been, showing up for Wofford, packing the stadium, doing all of that. If we get a coach in here that everybody believes in, I think people will. You saw it when Pry got the job. Donors stepped back up and gave him, more resources to work with. So again, I'm dubious of that. We'll see how it works. Brandon Mills, how do we find an additional $30 million in donor fundraising per year? I agree. Is it by more required gifts for season tickets? Whit alluded in his podcast today that that's not necessarily what that meant outright. I'm not ruling it out because I don't think it would be very positive, very, very well received to come out and say that. But I will take him at his word for it at this point. Brandon Mills went on to say, also, this funding should mean upgrades to Lane Stadium, right? AKA LED lights and Wi-Fi. Although I'm in the minority who couldn't care less about the lack of Wi-Fi, I got to tell you, Brandon, I don't care at all about Wi-Fi. I don't care at all about LED lights. I truly don't. I put out a tweet yesterday. Yeah, yesterday saying that I'd rather have the troughs come back. I really don't care. I tweet as much as anybody that I know personally, and obviously Sons of Saturday is not loosely, is tied to our success on social media. And obviously the best times to be social media-ing are during these football games. And that's just not important to me. I know it's important to other people. So Whit did mention that improving the fan experience is going to be a part of that. So I do think that there will be upgrades to Lane Stadium. I did see some people talking about like increasing the capacity. I don't think that is what that will directly translate to, but who knows? We'll see. I think Wi-Fi and LEDs are probably pretty close to the top. Brett Stredge, will any of this increased budget assist NIL? So first of all, I encourage you all listen to Josh Pate's rant about the open job at Virginia Tech and the open job at UCLA. He made some points on how important it is to not just move on from a coach, but also have the infrastructure for them to be successful. So as far as NIL is concerned, we all have the same cap. Like adding $220 whatever million doesn't mean that Virginia Tech can now buy better players at a much higher clip. Like every Division I, Power 4 school, pretty much any Division I school that's competing at the highest level, has the ability to revenue share up to $20 million across all of their sports. Virginia Tech is doing that, but so is Duke, so is Cal, so is UCLA, so is Stanford, so is Mississippi State. They're all doing that. So just think of that $20 million in terms of NIL as a line item on your operating budget. Now, this increased funding, to me, what does it mean? Number one, it means that you can keep up in the facilities race. You can hire a better coach. You can hire more coaches. You can hire more staff. You can do more in the terms of improving fan experience and everything along those lines. The job becomes more attractive. On the flip side, and kind of what the athletic department needs to figure out is building out NIL infrastructure. And what exactly do I mean by that? I was listening to a podcast with Brett Yormark, who is the athletic director at Ohio State. And he was talking about how they have essentially built out this fundraising, business curating media arm of Ohio State, whose sole responsibility is to seek out deals I'm not trying to misquote because I'm just trying to give you the gist here, but their entire job is to essentially facilitate, look for, and curate deals for their student athletes to maximize their NIL up and above the $20 million. So, when Triumph got started, they opened up that facility where guys and gals were doing their podcasts in there. That's kind of what I'm thinking about, hiring personnel that are able to go out and talk to the Pepsis, the Amazons, the Googles, the Coca-Colas of the world and say, hey, we have this star point guard. We have this star wide receiver, this star linebacker. You should be working with them, creating spaces for athletes to be able to leverage that. So I know I droned on on that question for a while, but that's kind of what I think about when I think of this new money. But no, it doesn't necessarily change the salary cap of what the school can directly pay your athletes, but it can create an opportunity for you to build more attractive facilities, bring in better coaches, and also facilitate more outside of the $20 million that is allowed to be paid directly from the school in NIL. So, that's how I would answer that. JTM had a question. We'll come back to that one after I talk about the Whit podcast. So here's what we got from Whit Babcock's podcast. I encourage you to listen to it. I'll link it below in the description and also the article that we put out here in the social media as well. So I got this from Andy Bitter. He gave us kind of like a TLDR on each person who was on the search committee. So the search committee was made public today. These are the people that are going to be working together to find out who the next coach of Virginia Tech is going to be. That list consists of Bruce Arians, VT alum and former NFL coach; Eddie Royal, ACC Network analyst and former Hokies wide receiver; Bud Foster, former longtime VT defensive coordinator; Ryan McCarthy, current Board of Visitors member; Jay Pearson, current Board of Visitors member; and Brad Hops, former Board of Visitors member. We also have Bridget Ryan Berman, who's the former CEO of Victoria's Secret, Giorgio Armani, Ralph Lauren, and is on many Pamplin boards and councils. And then Lynn Dowdy, retired CEO of KPMG, Boeing Board of Directors member, and is also on Pamplin boards and councils. So a couple things. Number one, really solid list. I think the coolest part about it is you check a couple of boxes, right? The 3 Virginia Tech football people that you checked come from 3 different generations of Virginia Tech. You have Bruce Arians from, I'm not trying to date our guy, but a little senior. He's in the senior Virginia Tech football lore category. You got Bud Foster, who was there when it was better than it's ever been, from the bottom to the top. Lives, breathes, drinks, sweats, everything Virginia Tech. And then you have Eddie Royal, was part of some of the last most successful Virginia Tech teams. He's also a rising star in the multimedia space too. So you have that. You check the box, and I don't mean that backhandedly at all, but you have 3 members of the Board of Visitors. 2 are current, 1 is former. That all bring their own specific chops and business acumen to the table. And then you have 2 really notable, really well-respected CEOs, right? And look, people are going to psychoanalyze this. People are going to, oh man, what do people at Victoria's Secret know about football? What do they know about football? Look, ultimately, coaching hires are a bit of a crapshoot. I am much more interested in what the agreed upon criteria of a coach they're bringing in is going to be, right? Is it coaching experience? Is it connections to the state of Virginia? I hope not. Is it, they're scoring one score game? They're going to have a weighted criteria of how they're going to make this decision. Outside of that, really, I trust just how do they interview? What questions are they being asked? How do they present? So look, you can tie yourself up in knots about this list. I really don't have much of a problem with it. Now, I said I don't have much of a problem with it because, and again, a lot of this is politics, right? A lot of this is decided on, there's a portion of it of who's best for the job. And hopefully that's the most or the only thing that's being considered. And then there's also at the end of the day, there's a certain amount of people that can be on the committee. And, if the criteria is you graduated from Virginia Tech, I'd love to be on the committee. I don't have any reason to be on the committee. But there is a name probably several names of people who I would not say surprised, but a little disappointed aren't on the list. I will leave it at that. But my wish and my hope is that this group does a good job. I think it's a well-respected group, and I am looking forward to see how we come out the other end of this thing. A couple other things. GM or coach first. So let's answer this question. What is a GM? Like what is that? So a GM we're familiar with is somebody from, can make or break a program at the professional level. Billy Beane changed the Oakland Athletics. Theo Epstein changed the Boston Red Sox. It's basically the person who's making decisions on talent and player acquisition at the professional sports level. Now, what does it mean right now? Because all of these teams in college are starting to have a GM. Here's what a GM is in college, okay? A GM is essentially a athletic director who has been put in place of overseeing football. Football has become such a complicated and large job that just having a coach and one athletic director overseeing it, that's a vast simplification, but you can't do that anymore. And also, when you're talking about money and you're talking about contracts and player movement and recruiting and everything else, like it's so much more of a demand now that it's not really realistic to have your coach solely responsible for that. So you go ahead and you get a GM. In my opinion, a GM is almost like if you had a single director of athletics that was responsible for football, that's what the GM is. So for a long time, Virginia Tech was operating without a GM. Just to give you an example of a couple of professional teams who operated without a GM, and their head coach was the head coach and the GM at the same time. Y'all remember the Clippers with Doc Rivers? When he was the head coach and he was the GM, they sucked. How about the Bill O'Brien Texans? That was bad. That was really bad. And then lastly, shout out to my guy PB. How about the Chip Kelly Eagles? When you have a coach making decisions on how much people are being paid, who we're bringing in, and having to call the plays and manage the staff, it's just it doesn't make a lot of sense. So when Bruce Arians went on the Pat McAfee show, he mentioned that the GM would come before the coach. And this is not Bruce Arians' fault, but a lot of people took that and ran with it. And maybe that was the case at the time. It sounds like it was. I'm glad we're rethinking this for a couple of reasons. If we just defined the GM as being the athletic director of football, it's kind of hard to sell a coach on, hey man, like we just got this guy in place. He's going to be in charge of you. He's going to tell you kind of what to do or help you or be 50-50 or 30-70 or whatever it is on putting this team together. So you guys are going to have to get along. I would rather have a situation, and certainly when you're trying to attract a coach, where they're going to have some say in who their essentially running mate is. This is almost like a president and vice president situation, right? Like that's kind of, if you want to think of it a certain way, president, vice president, that's kind of it. You're not going to go to the person that you want to run for the Republican and Democratic Party and be like, hey, we already picked the vice president, so you guys just go on ahead here. That would be silly. That would be dumb. That would be stupid. So also hiring a GM before a coach, would be a weird situation because I'm going to use an extreme example. Let's say we hire Coach Munkin at Army. He runs a triple option, but we got a GM and the GM is used to recruiting spread offenses, right? So hiring a GM who's going to have a specific strategy for bringing in players, bringing in talent, evaluating talent. It makes no sense to make that hire before you know what type of offense, what kind of program, and what type of team our head coach is looking to bring in. So that person not only needs to be in lockstep with the coach, that person also needs to think about the sport the same way as the coach, and also just be building towards the same thing versus trying to build a plan as they go and make their strategies mesh. So I hope that makes sense. That would almost be like hiring an interior decorator who specializes in beach houses, but you're still considering moving to the mountains or moving to the desert. That would be pretty dumb. That would be pretty stupid. Whit also mentioned Ole Miss's GM, Billy Glasscock. Objectively funny name. Billy Glasscock and Lane Kiffin are 50-50. They're kind of like 50-50 partners in managing the Ole Miss football team. That's worked out pretty well. And I want to say this. We have outsourced our GM role to Kelly Woolwine and Michael Hazel. And Whit also said analytics. I don't know what that means. We didn't have Huddle 8 years ago, and now we're using analytics. I don't know. I can't speak for the computer, but I can speak for Michael Hazel and Kelly Woolwine. I think they're both great dudes. Kelly Woolwine stepped up in a time where nobody else would to take on a role that nobody is qualified to do, and made the most of it. I think that if we're being 100% honest, if we have this new budget and we can go out and make it happen, and it's stupid to apply those rules retroactively, but Michael Hazel and Kelly Woolwine are probably not best suited or equipped internally or externally to do that. And with that said, have done a pretty damn good job to go out and find a Bashal Tutin, to find a Terrion Stewart, to find a Jalen Lane, to retain guys like we have been able to retain, to find an Antoine Powell-Ryland, right? We haven't won a lot of games, but we've definitely brought talent in. So I want to tip my cap to them, and also I want to be excited about the future that we're going to bring somebody in who should have that job and should do even take the success we've seen so far and multiply it. So I do want to say that. Lastly, and probably most importantly for most people, so is he staying? Whit Babcock, at the end of the podcast, said that he is nearing the end of his 12th year as the Hokies athletic director and is looking forward to starting year 13 in January. He also took a lot of ownership, saying the buck stops with him and the success has not been good enough, and he wants to fix it. He also mentioned, this is a direct quote, I work at the pleasure of the board and president, and my role continues to be being the AD. I want to help this search committee in any way I can, and same for the next head coach. Get him up and running and succeeding. My role will also include helping lay the infrastructure and groundwork on this new budget investment and the step-by-step invest to win plan. The AD role is always to continue to help the university navigate the new and ever-changing landscape of college athletics. I'm sorry, my dyslexia just comes up and bites me sometimes. Look, I shared my thoughts on Whit Babcock's tenure. Above all else, we just need to know what the situation is. Truly. Like, we just talked about how important it is to be in lockstep with your GM. It's also a lot of people are there's supposedly some sort of media meeting with Babcock happening on Monday. My opinion, Monday has to have some sort of definitive answer. And I'm kind of at the point where I don't care which one it is. We have our search committee. They're going ahead and doing it. But if I'm a potential college coach and there's questions about who the AD is and who's making decisions and is he going to be here, or, they just fired their guy on Monday. There needs to be no question over who's in charge, who's going to continue to be in charge when we're hiring a head coach, because all those questions are going to be asked as they continue to go down the interviewing process. I actually, and some people may hate this, don't think it is in Virginia Tech's best interest to fire or move on from their athletic director this upcoming Monday. But if they're going to do it, it has to be this upcoming Monday. So that's really all I care about. Is we can't continue to have this cloud over our head of text messages going back and forth and tweets going back and forth and articles going back and forth of I hear he's done at the end of the year. I hear he's done at the end of the week. I hear he's done on Wednesday. That type of not knowing is not positive. If you're interviewing for a job and the first thing you do when you type in, I'm going to work at SAP, boop, 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 boop. Oh man, their CEO might step down or might extend for 10 more years. Instability is not good, and we can't have it. And I think in general, Virginia Tech's PR has been pretty damn good the last couple of weeks. You got the Phil Montgomery train is up and rolling. The $50 million is coming in. Like in general, vibes are high from a national standpoint. But this AD situation, the cloud over that, has got me concerned. And if I come away from these two, if you haven't paid attention to anything that's going on with the BOV and the Whit Babcock presser, here's the TLDR. We're hiring a coach for the GM. We approved a massive budget increase, and there's non-guarantees on Whit Babcock's. There's non-guarantees on Whit Babcock's future with Virginia Tech coming from everybody but Whit Babcock, because everything that he said in this podcast points to the fact that he's going to continue to be here. If that's the case, that's the case. But this, like, who knows what the answer situation is not good. The other part of the TLDR is I need to know how this $30 million in donor fundraising as it pertains to this budget increase is. I mean, is that total university philanthropy? Is that specifically Hokie Cub? I understand that we have advancement that's working on it as well. That's helpful. But what if they don't get to the $30 million number? What if they just don't? Is that a smokescreen? So ultimately, and my biggest problem with Virginia Tech athletics for a long time, and I'm glad that the podcast came out today. What a silly sentence. Is just transparency, man. Like, I still don't really even know what bridge funding is. It's on the sheet. I don't really know what it means. Philanthropy, I don't really understand where we're getting $30 million of philanthropy, like how we settled on that number. Like, how did that number come to be? And if we don't get to that number, what happens? With all of that said, I'm excited about a new coach. I'm excited about how the guys have responded in the locker room. And it seems like we're on the cusp of a new chapter for Virginia Tech. You cannot screw this up. Cannot be screwed up. This is kind of a real chance for a hard reset. And it is Bill Roth said it to Whit. This is like the most transformative thing that's happened with Virginia Tech athletics, Virginia Tech football in his tenure. That is absolutely true. But we need to know who's on the bus, who's driving the bus, and where is the bus going, and how is it getting there? So those are my biggest questions. What was that, 30 minutes? 33 minutes? I'm in Lake Kiwi, South Carolina for the weekend. Hope everybody has a phenomenal homecoming. If you're on the way back from homecoming, I hope we won. Beat Wake. I also want to extend a huge shout out to Logan Ross. Logan Ross handing out the game day pins. So if you're hearing this, there's plenty of time. Sign up for the homecoming happy hour. I believe you can still sign up. That is on our Twitter page. Like this video, subscribe if you get a chance. I haven't given you guys a call to action. If you are still listening to this YouTube video, comment an emoji of some sort of construction emoji. It can be a dump truck, it can be a crane, it can be a safety vest, a hard helmet, whatever it is. Because we're under construction. We're trying to get this thing right. That's what we're working on. So looking forward to it in terms of some bets I placed this weekend. I am on the over in the Florida State game. I am on the over in the Florida-Texas game. I am on Florida State to cover. I'm also on Florida State outright. I am also on Vanderbilt to cover. I am also on the under for the UVA-Louisville game. It's sitting at like 61.5. It's just too many points. Have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy. And we will be talking to you on Sunday after, hopefully, a Virginia Tech win. But those are my thoughts on the BOV vote and the Whit cast. Take care, everybody.